Yeah, you're on the Hillbilly Voodoo channel. Today on Hillbilly Voodoo, we're going to continue work on our frame for our Mega Quad pick and place off-road type vehicle. And I'm going to make a quick and dirty tube notcher for my lathe to make these super nice notches. Make my life a lot easier. Stick around, see what type of Hillbilly Voodoo we had to do to create this stuff today. Here's a bit of a recap for those of you that are just finding us, or maybe those of you that are watching and are just perpetually lost, or yeah, whatever your deal is. We are trying to combine the best properties of a whole bunch of different machines to build the ultimate mega quad off-road vehicle that can pick, pack, and place materials and do work faster and pack stuff faster than the excavator, pack bigger loads than the side-by-side. It's going to be articulating in the middle like my loader. And last time we got the front end of our frame done to the point, if you look at it right now, it's upside down. Our differential perches are right here. The differential is going to be going across the front. Like I say, this is the front end of our frame with our articulating pivoting point. Now, if you're not subscribed, you should subscribe. You should go back and watch the first episode. Or you should continue watching this episode, and if you get confused, then you can go back and watch the first episode. Our articulating point this way is going to allow us to steer. This will allow the wheels to articulate back and forth and up and down and move around. Now, last time I was going to mount our differential, but now thinking about it, why am I going to add a whole bunch more weight onto this thing when it's only half done? So we'll just leave that differential right where it is for now. Let's start working on the back half of this frame. Now, what are we going to need for the back half of the frame? Well, we're going to need something to, number one, attach to that 1-ton wheel hub. So let's go check around our piles of ground obtainium, find us a plate of steel that we can make an attachment to bolt onto that hub. Now, some of you might not be so sharp, but don't worry. Bart's sharpening things up for you right here. So you just stick around, watch what we're doing, and don't worry, the supervisors will let you know if we're screwing anything up here. Let's check our piles of ground obtainium for something we can make a plate out of. You know what? Why the hell are we digging around in this stuff? Why don't we just take one of the old 1-ton wheels and cut the center out of that? Yeah. We're not using it for anything else, so might as well use it for that. Hey, that's kind of smart. Let's totally do that. Now, before anybody starts freaking out and blowing a rang about me wrecking a good wheel, this is a lock ring wheel, a tube style. Nobody wants these things, and if you do, you should definitely check your head, because these are garbage. Old school, old style, weren't a good idea at the time. So let's chop the center out of this and use it for something that's actually productive. Oh, and this one's been chopped up and modified once before. You see the weld in there? That ain't no factory original to anything that I know of, but okay, let's hack this thing up. Now that we got that center cut out of that rim, we can use this to start building our back half of the frame off of here. Spinny, spinny. Now I have been dreading notching, cutting and notching these tubes with the grinder. I've been bird mouthing them, and like I said in my last video, I don't know why I haven't built a tube notcher by now. So I think I'm gonna attempt a quick and dirty tube notcher just to make this job suck less. If you start to dread doing something, you should probably find a different way to do it. So many ways to skin a cat. Why are you gonna keep doing it the same way if it sucks? So while I was cutting this, kind of came up with a little bit of an idea in my head to use what I have in my shop as a notcher. Now let's see if I can explain this to you guys in a way that, well, hell with explaining it. Why don't you guys just watch me build it? Now, in order for this idea to work, I'm going to need a piece of angle iron that I can clamp the tubing or pipe into. Now, I cut a bunch of crap apart the other day, and there's some pieces laying under here. That was a chunk of square tubes that I needed a piece of angle iron, so I needed to cut a chunk of square tube into a piece of angle iron. Did that make sense? That totally made sense, because I couldn't find any angle iron. And then that's a piece of channel that we could make. Now we'll use this one. Now we need to find a couple hose clamps, and luckily I'm pretty sure I got some of those hanging on the board in the shop. Now, to say that my wife is a crap collector just as bad as me wouldn't be very fair, because she ends up with good stuff and mine is usually just crap. She got all these hose clamps at a garage sale for free. Yeah, they're dirty, but they're all good, and all we need is two. That piece of pipe will be able to clamp onto there, right? So I'm going to put you guys down, and I'm going to find two hose clamps that I can use. Well, this is what I got going on here. I got our hose clamps clamping our piece of angle iron to a piece of pipe, chucked up in the lathe. I have a piece of metal squeezed in the tool post. Now, my thought here is I'm going to weld that piece of metal to that angle, so that should be perfectly centered. Is that making sense? It's kind of making sense. Now, weld that to that, take the pipe out of the lathe, put my hole saw in the chuck, turn this whole pipe that way, hole saw is in the chuck, run the slide up against the hole saw. It should cut me a nice notch, right? Now, I have used my hole saws in my drill press, but my drill press sucks. It only goes to, I think it's like 300 RPM or something like that. It goes up to like 1,000,000 RPM on the fast end, but it only goes down slow enough to about 300 or somewhere around there. I don't know who has ever said I need my drill press to go 1,000,000 miles an hour, but not go slower. That just doesn't make any sense. So this lathe I can get down to, like 60 RPM or whatever. What I've found using hole saws in thicker steel like this is that they get hot, and as soon as they get hot, the teeth dull, and then they're no good. So my whole theory here, run this a lot slower, keep it cool. It should do what I need it to do. You think this is gonna work? Well, let me weld this in here, and I guess we're gonna find out. So this is what we ended up creating here, just quick and dirty. Block of steel welded to a chunk of angle iron. Now I'm gonna stick it back in the tool post. clamp it down. Use my hose clamps to hold that piece of pipe on there. And then we're going to put the hole saw in there. Now the unfortunate thing is the only hole saw that I have right now is just slightly smaller than the pipe. So we might still have to do a little bit of grinding because, yeah, if it's just slightly smaller, then the notch will be slightly smaller than the, yeah, that totally makes sense. Think about it, it makes sense. So let's put this all together here and try it out and see if we actually made a thing or if we just wasted 15 minutes for nothing. Now I got my pipe clamped in there with the hose clamps. If this idea works, I think I'm gonna come up with a different clamping method, but to try this out and see if it's going to be a viable option, that'll work for now. Hole saw's in there. I've taken the pilot bit out. I've marked it where I want the farthest edge out of the notch, like I want the notch to be like that, right? So I marked it there, and we'll line that up like that. I guess if the hole saw is touching the pipe on both sides, then it must be at 90 degrees, right? And if we're like that, then that should be where we need to cut the notch. Now, when I use my hole saws for cutting metal, all I use for lubricant or coolant is just straight water because I'm cheap and it works. And I don't mind a little bit of rust because everything I'm working with is already rusty. So yeah, let's try this out and see if we have made a real thing here or if we're just clowning. Oh, I got the lathe set to 60 RPM. Could go down slower, but I think 60 is probably a safe place to start. Well, let's see what happens. Wow, that totally worked. Seemed to work pretty fast too. I didn't even hit the power feed. I was just feeding it by hand, but I'll just nip it here, and on the other side we should have a nice notch. Let's pull it out of there and see what we've made. Doesn't look too bad, hey? That notch doesn't look too terribly crappy. Definitely going to need to get a bigger round hole saw. But I cleaned it up a little bit there. And That's how it looks. Bigger hole saw, then I probably won't have any of that little bit of a gap there. Well, that should make this project suck a hell of a lot less. So let's get back to building our frame here. Well, I'm sitting here whacking away at the frame, and I just realized something. I was building the back half of this frame exactly like the front half, but I don't have to do that. The axle is going to be where the dump box pivots at. So I don't need anything beyond the axle. The axle is going to be right about here somewhere. So I really don't need any of that crap back there. The dump box will be, well, because it's upside down, dump box will be pivoting like that kind of thing. So all that frame back there is kind of a waste. I don't need that right now. I probably won't need it at all, but yeah, it's just going to be in the way of the tilting mechanism. Yeah, sitting here thinking that I'm all the shot caller of my own reality, when in fact, I'm just punching myself in the face and using more material than I need to be. So, I guess I better figure out exactly the wheelbase that I want here, and put the axle mount right there. That'll determine the wheelbase. Then I can get rid of this stuff back here. Does that make sense to you guys? It's making sense in my head. Sometimes I'm wondering if listening to that inner monologue in your head is a good thing, or whether you're just listening to the voices in your head and you're really crazy. How do you determine that? Listening to the voices in your head? It's supposed to be your conscience, right? Your inner monologue. But yeah, people that listen to the voices in their head, they're usually nuts. So maybe you'll just stop listening to the voices and just start doing, and well, no, that won't work. Anyways, let's get the mount here, or the position for our axle figured out, and then we'll go and get rid of this stuff back here. So what I'm thinking here is we have approximately a 44-inch round to the outside tire, and we want our axle in the middle of that tire, obviously, but we're going to need some clearance so when we turn, that tire doesn't hit here. So we got a tire like that, we turn. Yeah, so we should probably come back about 6 inches maybe. That should give us enough that when we turn, it won't hit up here. We'll mark there 6 inches. Now, we have a 44-inch tire. Center that, 22. Right, because that would be 44. Now, okay, that's sort of making sense there. So if we put an upright here that our differential axle, whatever you want to call it, can mount on. We're going to go the same plane and everything as the front, but we'll figure that out. And then connect from there to there. Yeah, that makes sense, because then we can get rid of all this stuff back here. We can probably use all this pipe for our uprights and stuff like that, but yeah, that makes way more sense. Like, all this stuff back here is just extra weight that we don't need, because we're going to be building a dumping box that we would just be doubling up on all this, and it just, lighter's better, right? Maybe not, but in this case I think it's probably good to save weight anywhere that I possibly can. We talk about crazy. I'm sitting here talking to myself all day long. Well, technically I'm talking to you, but there's none of you here, so really I'm talking to myself. Yeah, that's kind of a whole other ball of wax. Okay, well, let's figure out the length that we need this piece here. How are we going to do that? Well, we already cut these pieces and notched them, so maybe we'll just stuff that there. Yeah, that'll work. Until it doesn't work. Well, maybe I'll grab the welder and just tack that in there for now, so I'm not fighting with it, and we'll take some measurements from there. I think it'll probably be easier if I just measure this front mount, copy it to the back, and then make that top, well, that tubing come up and meet this. That makes a lot more sense, I think. So we got 13.5 from the notch to the saddle there. So let's go cut some pieces that are 13.5 and see if it makes sense after we cut and notch them. I got our pieces that are 13.5 put into place here now, and all that stuff behind it cut off. It's looking a lot more like it should, I think. Our front pivot here, articulation point is all welded together, and our frame does its thing this way and does its thing that way. Now I don't know if that's going to be enough of an angle for turning. You don't want too much, because when you turn you're sending all your weight kind of one way, and it will, if you ever seen pictures of rock trucks flipped over, that's because the balance is all out of whack. But I think maybe I could gain a little bit more here by nipping the corners off of this tubing. That'll gain us another 1.5 inches, which would be about another almost 10 degrees, I think, if my math is mathing right. So I think that's what I might do. Now I think this video is going to be ended here. Probably didn't get as much done as I wanted to, but I spent a lot of time with the grandkids and my son and daughter-in-law this weekend, so spending time with your family is way more important than working on goofy YouTube projects. So until next time, guys, use what you got to make what you want. Subscribe, like, all that other YouTube stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.